Okay, Salem's Lot 1979, starring David Soul from Starsky and Hutch as the main character, Ben Marsden. Interesting miniseries. In a lot of ways, it feels very much like a Hammer horror film, although not the most faithful adaptation of the novel. It's very well done in its own right. One of the biggest issues with it not being faithful is Barlow here, and I'll naturally have a picture on the screen, but even though it's a great looking design for a vampire, this Barlow doesn't speak. He has no personality and robbed of everything that made the character of Barlow in the book scary, because in the book, see my Stephen King review, or my review of the book by Stephen King, in link in the comments. Barlow, what made him scary was the fact that he could talk. Barlow was fully capable of convincing you wanted to be turned into a vampire without telling you that he's going to turn you into a vampire. He can talk you into anything without telling you what he's talking you into, and that made him a truly terrifying villain. In Sadly, although I really like this version, it's lacking. But that being said, like I said, this feels like a Hammer movie, which is appreciated. It does follow similar beats to the book. Author comes back to town, same time a vampire moves in. People start disappearing or getting sick. But just in the broad strokes, which, I get, there was no way back then, especially, you could have adapted a book like Salem's Lot as a TV movie and done it justice. They had to keep out some of the heavier moments and simplify a lot of stuff. Which is again, I understand, but it's kind of a shame we never got a proper adaptation of Salem's Lot yet, which is why I have hopes for the new version. This one here, another decent miniseries, and what's weird is where this one got things right, this one got wrong, and this one gets wrong things, this one gets right. In both cases, I'll do that when I eventually review it, but this has a book accurate version of Barlow's servant Strucker, where the newer miniseries didn't, and I say newer, it's almost 20 years old. But it's still good. It's got a creepy atmosphere, although I argue Barlow would have been scarier if he could have talked. And some of the events are out of place. It even has the same characters, Susan, the kid, Mark, the Glick boys who are the first victims, and the town slowly starts succumbing to the vampire menace. One thing I really do like about this is all the vampires have this bluish gray skin tone, and they just look sick and diseased, and it looks like a plague spreading. So another reason that this was kind of good for my Nosferatu celebration, because Nosferatu deals with the actual plague spreading. The pace, it can be kind of clunky in places. As a mini-series, viewing it on 2 nights, I'm sure it's fine, but when you watch this as one big 3-hour movie, it does feel really off. It just feels clunky. So my best advice is, if you're going to watch an hour and a half, come back the next day and watch the next hour and a half. Now, the performance in this movie, the performances overall, they're pretty solid. The 2 best, and I just looked up his name and it slipped me, but David Soul and the actor that plays Strucker are the two most standout performances in the movie. And interestingly enough, the Marsden house, which it's the Marsden house in this has become among the most iconic houses in horror, was actually a miniature with interior sets built for, and that's interesting because it was composited really well. There are some scenes like the opening credits where they just linger on shots of the Marsden house, and you can tell by seeing those shots when you have the knowledge that, yeah, it is looking very miniature ish, but it's like a really well done miniature. I would actually describe it as a Hollywood quality miniature made for a TV production. But again, they knew how to stretch what they had. Tobe Hooper was a good choice to do this movie, which, when given a rating, is actually a PG rating, which, you wouldn't today, that would instantly be scoffed at, have giving a King book a PG rating, but for the most part, this works. It had to leave the gore, it had to leave the more graphic details out, but they did the best they could with the confines of what they had. And although ideally it would have been better as an R-rated TV movie, they did a very solid job. Like, this film is a great example of how using constraints to your benefit. Like, no unlimited budget, no creative control, no go as graphic as you want. Here, Tobe Hooper, this is a TV movie. You have this budget. Make the movie. And fortunately, Tobe Hooper had a good eye for horror. He knows how to frame shots. He knows how to make scenes look ominous and eerie, and to make things more suggestive, which is kind of a no-brainer for a movie with those constraints, because despite the fact that his Texas Chainsaw Massacre is often considered or said to be the goriest horror movie ever made, there's barely a gallon of fake blood used in the production of that movie. Most everything you see is suggestive, which makes it feel a lot more graphic than it really is. So, yeah, considering the confines they had, Tobe Hooper may have actually been the perfect choice for that. And this film does have number of iconic scenes, like the vampire boy tapping at the window and floating through the window. Those are famous horror scenes for the ages, arguably in the same league as the shadow of Nosferatu creeping up the stairs. Salem's Lot is a great vampire story that King's inspiration was, what if Dracula came to a small town in Maine? I haven't gone over the plot much, but that's because I've already discussed the plot when I reviewed the book. And this gets to broad strokes, right? Just goes over a lot of the finer details. The film even has a similar framing to the book, where it both begins and ends after the events of the story. So, yeah, you can tell Hooper did read the book and was committed to being as accurate as possible, where possible. I'm hoping we finally, if this new up and coming Salem's Lot movie ever sees the light of day, I'm hoping we finally see the perfect adaptation, because in this one, we have the scene with Barlow at Mark Petrie's house and him letting Mark go for Father Callahan, only we never see what happened to Callahan. And his fate, again, I'm not going to spoil it, but his fate in the book is truly a fate worse than death. It would have been merciful for Barlow to just outright kill him, where in this version, Callahan turns evil. If nothing else, if that film only gets one thing right, I want it to be what happened to Father Callahan. But this one, I'll give a decent movie. Might be a little slow. Like I said, definitely break up the viewings because as a 3 hour movie, it does lag in places, whereas 2 hour and a half as a 1 hour and a half part and a second hour and a half part viewed over separate days, it doesn't tend to lag in the same way. So like, share, comment, subscribe. I'm not sure which coming next, but the review of Nosferatu itself will be closer to Halloween, so that's probably going to be the penultimate showing for this year's Montober. So don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. Over and out.